next slide, that is a human embryo. And here you see the long, here's the leg, hind leg developing what us evolutionists would call a very long fish-like tail, just like the fish embryo has. And then here we see the subject of our discussion tonight. These are called pharyngeal gill clefts. And these form in a fish, just like this, and they also form in a human. So the take-home message from the theory of evolution is that evolutionary theory predicts very powerfully that organisms would have to some degree, recapitulate in their embryology what happened in evolution. And I have a 45-minute lecture that I actually gave this very day in my class on vertebrate Evo-Devo, in which I show how this is very no, they're not gill slits. These are not gill slits, and Dr. Hovind is totally correct in trying to rip that stupid statement out of the textbooks. It's totally deceiving to say that a human embryo has gill slits. We don't. We have the remains of one, which is your eustachian tube. It still goes from the outside to the inside of your throat. We have the remains of one, but we do have pharyngeal gill clefts just like a fish does. And it would take me a long time to demonstrate it, but it's evidence for evolution. It's exactly the kind of thing we would expect to see if the theory is true, and we see it.
I think if, from a design perspective, as the baby develops inside the mother, it's very important that the nervous system develop first and the circulatory system develop first. The hind legs are unnecessary for the first few months of development. He's not going to go anywhere. Okay? So if you'll notice, where the hind legs are going to be growing, this is not a tail. These 5 or sometimes 6 little bones become the tail bone, the coccyx. The next 5 or 6 up become the lumbar. Some people have 5, some have 6. Most have 5 fused together for the lumbar. And that's exactly the right position where they are. So what you see happening here is the backbone and the central nervous system is developing first, which is the logical way it has to develop. It starts with the brain. It has to end someplace. It ends at the end of the tail. My wife bruised her tailbone 4 years ago and is still in pain today, every day. We've tried everything to get that fixed. So the tailbone is essential. The nervous system has to end someplace. And it starts out, this is a developmental sequence, okay? Back up one slide if you could there for me. Notice this is a drawing. This is not a picture. This is a drawing, okay? These drawings are fake. If you turn my projectors on here, I again stand by the actual photographs. These are the drawings Haeckel made. These are the photographs. He's still trying to teach this is evidence. It's not, okay? It's just simply not true. Take it out of the book, okay? Thank you.
Do I see myself as a sinner before holy God, and what do I think will happen if I die? On those days when I believe in God, which is about half the time, I have no fear whatsoever of facing Him, because I believe that I do a reasonably good job of trying. Here's my philosophy of life. My kids. I believe that the only thing that you need to do in life, and if there is a God, the only thing that He cares about us doing ultimately, is to enjoy nature and love people. I tell my kids, enjoy nature and love people. And that's all that you ever have to do, and I am willing to face any almighty that might exist. And secondly, if God doesn't exist, which I believe about half the time, when I die, I will turn into peat moss. And I will be dead, not just a long time, but forever.
My response to that question would be, yes, I certainly do think I'm a wicked sinner before a holy, righteous God, but I've been forgiven based on the blood of Jesus Christ, not based on my good works. If you'd uncover the projector just for a minute, here's what Thomas Huxley said. I'm sorry, Julian Huxley. That one's out of focus. Can you, that one there? He said, Julian Huxley is the grandson of Thomas Huxley, who really promoted Darwin. Huxley said, I suppose the reason we leapt at the origin of species was the idea of God interfered with our sexual mores. Well, there's an honest comment, okay? Michael Ruse, former Christian, said evolution is promoted by its practitioners as more than mere science. Evolution is an ideology, a secular religion, a full-fledged alternative to Christianity with meaning and morality. He said, I'm an ardent evolutionist and an ex-Christian. But I must admit that in this one complaint, and Mr. Gish is but one of many to make it, the literalists are absolutely right. Evolution's a religion. This was true of evolution in the beginning, and it's true of evolution still today. So it's something people believe in. It's not something they have real scientific evidence for. I think that as far as what happens when we die, we're going to stand before a holy, righteous God and give an account for everything we've said, done, or thought about. And if it wasn't for Jesus Christ, I would fear that day. Okay?
Okay, we're talking about the Big Bang Theory. And my way of thinking about that whole thing is very simple, philosophically. If the Big Bang occurred, and I think there's tremendous evidence to support empirically that it did take place, us scientists are completely, totally, 100% incapable of explaining why it happened. As is the case with a huge number of things in science that we still can't explain. Science is always trying to explain things. And so you're asking kind of a metaphysical question. And
where did that come from?
Yeah, well, half the time I'd say God. And the other time I'd say we don't know. You know, I tell people the three most important words in the English language. What are the three most important words to use in the English language? Answer, I love you. Okay? Now, what are the second most important three words to use in the English language? I don't know. That's my philosophy of life. And metaphysically, the Big Bang physicists and the theologians are in metaphysically exactly the same boat, because they both have to explain either how something was always here, either a universe or a God, or they have to explain how something came into being ex nihilo, out of nothing. Both philosophies share exactly the same problem.
I can show you what the textbooks teach. This is Discover magazine last year. Where did everything come from? He says here, the universe burst into something from absolutely nothing, zero, nada. As it became bigger, it became filled with even more stuff that came from absolutely nowhere. How is that possible? Ask Alan Guth. His theory explains everything. Well, Alan Guth said in Scientific American, he said, the observable universe could have evolved from an infinitesimal region. That's a dot. He said it's then tempting to go one step further and speculate that the entire universe evolved from literally nothing. That's what they teach. Now, I tell them, you're welcome to believe that. I don't care what you believe, but that's not science, and it shouldn't be taught in the textbooks at taxpayer expense. Okay?
I would agree with that.
Yeah, that's got nothing to do with science, and that goes in metaphysical. But several questions weren't answered earlier, and I do appreciate Dr. Rainbow coming tonight. I've been turned down over 3,000 times for debates. Professors simply won't debate it. They want to stand in front of their class where they have an obvious academic and psychological advantage over their students. But it's very rare to find one willing to defend his position in front of somebody over which he doesn't have his thumb on. He has no control over me whatsoever. He's not going to give me a grade. I'm not the least bit afraid of him. And students in his class are going to face this for the rest of the semester, though. I mean, tomorrow morning he's going to get to teach his view for an hour to a group of kids, and then the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And I think it's only fair that students get to